Mock Draft Monday. Here we are with another NFL mock draft here for round one. And we got some shakeup in the top 10 specifically. We see the Jacksonville Jaguars are now picking one. So there's going to be a huge shakeup in this mock draft. Who goes where? A lot has changed. So make sure to leave a like. Subscribe if you are new to utility sports as well for future NFL content, because just like in this video, stuff is always changing in the NFL as we get toward the offseason. Teams are going to be jockeying for position in the NFL draft. We're probably going to see a few trades and a lot of stuff to break down. Key thing here for this video, I am recording this on Monday before the Monday night games. Currently, with how the NFL is going with the COVID games on Tuesday, it's almost impossible to have the exact order perfectly after every single week for the whole week, because if I recorded this on Wednesday, then by the time the Thursday night game happens, the whole order gets thrown out. The whole order here for the draft gets thrown out of whack again. So I am just recording this on Monday for Mock Draft Monday. I know you guys love this, so make sure to leave a like if you do. And without further ado, let's jump into it here with Jacksonville. And they find themselves back in the number one spot. Of course, last year picked number one overall as well and took Trevor Lawrence. This year at pick one, they're in an interesting situation because they do have some good edge rushers on the roster already. Josh Allen is, of course, their best one. And then you also have K'Lavon Chaisson, who I think is a really, really good rotational pass rusher, offers really good speed off the edge. And for them here, they're in a situation where maybe they could look to trade down. Now, we're not going to do trades in this mock draft video just because the order isn't finalized. The order isn't actually set. These are not concrete hard assets at this point. For example, if the Jaguars won out, they'd end up picking way down here at like 7-8. They would not be picking first overall. Now, I'm not expecting them to win out, but these are not concrete obtainable assets at this point. We're past the trade deadline. There's nothing really they can do with these moves yet. So I'm not going to be doing mock trades in this video. So the Jaguars here, they're stuck at one for this part of the video. And I think there's two guys that they're going to consider: Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeaux. Those are the top two guys here. And Aiden Hutchinson is someone that makes a lot of sense for a base 4-3 defense. I like Kayvon Thibodeaux a little bit more for a 3-4. I see him functioning a little bit better as an outside linebacker, rushing off the edge, kind of like what we see Chase Young do for Washington here and there. I think that Kayvon Thibodeaux is going to be that option for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He goes first overall. Those two guys at the top are so extremely close. And that leaves Detroit here with an obvious no-brainer pick. It's going to be Aiden Hutchinson. When they had the first overall pick, I thought Aiden Hutchinson was the guy for them. And we see them go 1-2 here, but in inverse order from our last mock draft. Kayvon Thibodeaux goes first overall. I think his fit with Jacksonville is slightly better than Aiden Hutchinson's fit there. And then Aiden Hutchinson, I think he's a phenomenal fit in Detroit. I think he's exactly what they need. He's a Michigan kid staying there with the Detroit Lions. I think that's one of those feel-good stories and something that I think is bound to happen, honestly, this draft period, just because they need an edge badly. Aiden Hutchinson, the hometown kid, a phenomenal one, had one of the best college football seasons that we've seen in some time. Of course, there's some other guys who've shined this year as well in college football, specifically defensively even. But Aiden Hutchinson was so good defensively. He is a great pickup here for the Detroit Lions, number 2 overall. Pick 3, we got the Houston Texans here. And of course, Davis Mills has had a pretty good season actually up to this point. I believe he's thrown 10 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, a little bit under 2,000 passing yards. Of course, hasn't had every single start, but I think his performance at least makes Houston not feel like they have to press for a quarterback this season. They might take a little bit slower approach with it. They're going to trade Deshaun Watson, get a ton of assets for him at some point, I would guess. And maybe they're comfortable with what they have with Davis Mills at that quarterback position, at least for another year. And I think that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. For me, I'm considering Derek Stingley here, Evan Neal, and also Ikem Ekwonu, the tackle from NC State. For me, I think Houston's going to take the slower approach to this here and go with some guys who have really big upside, and that's Evan Neal, tackle out of Alabama. They badly need a little bit more offensive line help, and Evan Neal, you can play him at right tackle if you want to keep Laramie Tunsil at left tackle. Otherwise, Evan Neal could become your face of the franchise left tackle. You can move on from Laramie Tunsil via trade, and at that point, you're trying to really build up a ton of assets, sending Tunsil and Deshaun Watson out the door. The Texans are going to be in a much better position moving forward if they trade some of those top guys, get a ton of assets, and really try and build this team up the right way. They have a lot of players on expiring contracts, so they have a lot of roster spots to fill. Evan Neal, he's a great selection here. I also wouldn't be opposed to the Texans trying to trade down if a team really wants to jump up for a quarterback. However, I think with Evan Neal on the board, he's a really good fit, really good selection, and they take him 3rd overall. Pick 4, now we got the New York Jets here on the clock, and I'm looking at this, and there's a couple players that really stick out to me. Derek Stingley Jr. I love love mocking him to the New York Jets. And I also think here that Tyler Linderbaum does make a lot of sense. I would love for the Jets to get Tyler Linderbaum, build up that offensive line a little bit more. But I think Derek Stingley, he's just more the pure pedigree prospect that we're going to see go in a spot like this. 4th overall, he's extremely athletic. I believe was in the 98th percentile when it came to spark athletes, which is very, very impressive that he was that athletic at the cornerback position. I think cornerback's one of the most athletically demanding positions in the entire NFL. You have to be a quick twitch athlete. You also have to have good long speed and generally good length. And Derek Stingley checks all of those boxes, as well as being very, very disciplined in man-to-man coverage as well. I can trust him on the outside. He's not going to give up big plays over the top. I love him as a prospect. I think he's a phenomenal grab for my New York Jets. We've needed a number 1 cornerback since Darrelle Revis retired, and Derek Stingley fills those shoes. Pick 5, we got the Giants, and pick 6, we have the New York Giants. They just continuously are bunched together. Of course, the Chicago Bears do play the Minnesota Vikings tonight on Monday Night Football. So perhaps this number 6 pick slides maybe if the Chicago Bears do upset Minnesota. However, I would expect them to be picking 5 and 6 just based off who the Giants have been this year and who the Bears have been this year. These picks are going to be good picks. They're probably both going to be around that top 5 number. And here, 5th overall for the Giants, there's a few really, really good options out here. Tyler Linderbaum is going to be the selection 5th overall. Like I said, I'm a Jets fan. I would love for my New York Jets to get Tyler Linderbaum. However, I have him going to MetLife Stadium. However, he's going to be playing for the Giants, putting on the blue and red there for the New York Giants. And he's a phenomenal center prospect, probably the top interior offensive lineman in this class. Kenyon Green, another really good one as well. And I don't even think the Giants are done here yet at this point. They're looking at center Tyler Linderbaum, but they have another selection right here. Charles Cross, Ike Ekwonu are the 2 guys that stick out to me. I could also see the value in maybe going with a guy like Garrett Wilson, Kyle Hamilton, of course, just based off of value. He's a really, really good pickup here. I know he's a safety, but I still think he's a phenomenal playmaker on the defensive side of the football. But I think Ike Ekwonu, his upside as a run blocker is incredible. You add the best center in the class. You add arguably the best offensive tackle in the class here if you're New York. And you are sitting really pretty for the future. Daniel Jones, I know he's had his ups and downs in the first few years of his NFL career, but let's be honest about the Giants. They just haven't done a great job protecting him specifically this season. I think on day 2 of the NFL draft, the Giants probably look at the tight end position. Maybe a guy like Trey McBride from Colorado State, he could make some sense. Tyler Linderbaum, Ike Ekwonu, 2 phenomenal grabs in the top half of the NFL draft here for the New York Giants. We do have a New York Giants team-specific mock draft on the channel as well. So if that's something you're interested in watching, Giants fans, make sure you go check it out. I'll try and put a card in right here for it as well. Moving on to 7, we've got the Carolina Panthers here now, and they're an interesting team as well, just because of what they have currently on their roster. The quarterback position, I think, is the obvious one that they have to look at, and Kenny Pickett has been really rising up boards. Matt Corral's also here. Sam Howell, the North Carolina kid, can make some sense keeping him there in that region of the United States. I could see him being an interesting grab if they wanted to trade down, and I really would recommend the Carolina Panthers find a way to trade down because they do not have any assets really this year outside of their 1st round pick. They trade their 2nd round pick for Sam Darnold. They trade their 3rd round pick for CJ Henderson. They are devastated when it comes to their draft compensation, what they really have. They tried making win now moves and they just haven't won now. And that's really problematic for a team when you see them in the top 10 and they don't have their 2nd round pick or their 3rd round pick. That is very, very problematic for them. But here, again, I'm not doing trade downs in this video. I think that they'll look to do that on the actual draft. But for me, it's Matt Corral. He can really sling the football around the field. I think him and DJ Moore would make instant money working together. Those 2 guys would be great together just because Matt Corral has really good zip on his ball, really quick throwing motion. He's going to be able to get it underneath to a guy like DJ Moore consistently. And I also think Robbie Anderson would be someone who's going to get opened up again by Matt Corral. You know, he maybe doesn't have the most beautiful deep ball, but he can get it there. And I think that's really what you're looking for. A lot of teams, when they're prepping against Matt Corral, they're going to prep a lot of the underneath stuff, which makes Robbie Anderson extremely important for the Carolina Panthers to be able to stretch the field and Matt Corral to be able to hit him over the top. I think Corral could come in, be the year 1 starter. I know they got Sam Darnold on that 5th year option. However, I just don't see him being the guy anymore in Carolina. It just has been so inconsistent when he's played this year. Jets fans, we know all about it. You know, Sam Darnold, maybe we didn't get to see exactly who he was because of the lack of talent around him. However, Carolina's got a lot of offensive talent, and he's been that same guy. So I think we're really starting to see who Sam Darnold truly is as an NFL quarterback. Pick 8, we got the New York Jets here now, again on the clock, of course. Earlier on, pick 4, we went with Derek Stingley. And at this spot, there's a few different options we could go with. Charles Cross, if we really want to focus that tackle position. You have our left tackle already, the future Mekhi Becton. We have our left guard, Elijah Vera Tucker. Maybe we come back, grab a guy like Charles Cross, play him at right tackle. That could be an interesting pickup. However, one thing, Fance played really, really well this year when filling in for Mekhi Becton. So maybe tackle isn't the biggest need. Perhaps Kenyon Green at guard becomes the more valuable pickup for the New York Jets. I also think it's possible we look at some edges here. A guy like George Karlaftis could make some sense to me in the run game. We have Carl Lawson coming back, who's really, really good at getting after the quarterback, applying pressure. And for that reason, I'm going to go with George Karlaftis. We've struggled against the run a little bit defensively this year for the New York Jets. I think George Karlaftis, one of the better rush defense edges in the NFL draft this year. Karlaftis, coming out of Purdue, has had a lot of production in his career with the Boilermakers, and I think coming into the New York Jets, he could become a very, very good pickup for us as well. Probably move John Franklin Myers inside a little bit more often, and you can have a real nice rotation then. Once you get Carl Lawson back, George Karlaftis as well. I know that the Jets do have some nice edge pieces already. However, George Karlaftis just makes us a lot stronger and better against the run game. For example, think about when we faced Jonathan Taylor, a top-end running back. We got lit up that game. We need a guy like George Karlaftis in there to help us. The Jets badly need a little bit more rush defense help, and George Karlaftis provides that. Pick 9, we've got the Atlanta Falcons here, and they're a very interesting team here. And at this spot, you could see a few different options for this team. Wide receiver could make some sense. Calvin Ridley, I don't know what his long-term future looks like. Of course, he stepped away from football this season. Doesn't seem like he's on track to come back anytime soon, but maybe he becomes an interesting grab for the Atlanta Falcons to look for a wide receiver here just because of his situation currently. Maybe they look at safety as well. I know last year they grabbed Richie Grant, but Kyle Hamilton maybe just too good to pass up on here. I love what they have at linebacker. I do think they need a little bit more help defensively, specifically in that secondary, and I'm going to go ahead and take Kyle Hamilton. This is an example of a positional value drop. Kyle Hamilton is maybe one of the best defensive players in this class, could arguably be the best defensive player in the class. However, falls to 9th overall because of his position. We see it all the time during the NFL draft. Edges and cornerbacks get way more value and attention than the safety position. It's just the reality of it. Think about when Jamal Adams fell to number 6 to the New York Jets. Kyle Hamilton has a similar fall here. However, the Falcons should be walking away from the draft with all smiles after this one. This is a massive pickup for them. You have him, Richie Grant, as your starting safeties of the future, and that is scary. Kyle Hamilton is a phenomenal athlete, really good out in space, making plays in the pass game, but also you can play him up in the box. He's very versatile. Kind of reminds me of Harrison Smith, another Notre Dame safety who plays for the Minnesota Vikings now. He's had such a great career. Kyle Hamilton, very reminiscent, and perhaps even a better prospect coming in than Harrison Smith was. And Harrison Smith's been a former Defensive Player of the Year candidate. That's how good Kyle Hamilton possibly could be. Pick 10, we got the Philadelphia Eagles here now at this point. Last year, of course, they drafted Devontae Smith in the first round. He's been a phenomenal pickup for them. And they have a bunch of first-round picks this year. In fact, 3 of them, if we count them here, they have pick 10, pick 14, and then pick 21 here coming from Indianapolis at this point. So they have a really good chance to really improve their football team. Defensively, I think that's where we're probably going to get it started. I want to look at the cornerback position. And for me, it's going to be Ahmad Gardner out of Cincinnati. The Eagles have had a lot of success in the past drafting from Cincinnati. They found some really good players. And they badly need another outside cornerback. Ahmad Gardner has been tremendous for the Bearcats in his career. There, I believe his last 900 man-to-man cover snaps, he has not given up a touchdown, which is absolutely insane. That is insanity to the highest degree with how good he's been. Now, I'm not sure if that'll hold true against Alabama in their college football playoff matchup, but at this point, Ahmad Gardner is looking like a phenomenal prospect to me. I would love to see him come into Philadelphia and become their number 1 cornerback in the long term. Of course, they still have Darius Slay there, but I think Ahmad Gardner instantly becomes one of their build-around pieces on the outside. Pick 11 got the Minnesota Vikings, and they're probably a little bummed to see Ahmad Gardner go off the board right in front of them. And in turn, instead of going with Ahmad Gardner, they're going to look at the linebacker position here, and they're going to go with Devin Lloyd out of Utah. This is a phenomenal pickup for the Minnesota Vikings. They need to find a linebacker next to Eric Kendricks for the long term. Of course, Anthony Barr had his contract renegotiated and is going to be a free agent at the end of the season. So Devin Lloyd comes in, fills his shoes, can play off the ball. He's perfect next to Eric Kendricks, can also rush the quarterback a little bit. He's a little reminiscent of Micah Parsons from last year. Not quite the edge rusher, I don't think, that Micah Parsons has proved to be in his first year in the NFL. But I think Devin Lloyd's going to be an extremely important piece to an NFL defense at some point. He's going to make a ton of plays, pretty good in coverage as well. He was huge against Oregon in their 2 wins against the Ducks this year. And I see the Minnesota Vikings getting a phenomenal player in Devin Lloyd. Pick 12, we got the Washington football team here now. At this point of the draft, they're badly in need of a quarterback, and they're going to pull the trigger on Kenny Pickett. I think that the Washington football team is going to look for a quarterback this offseason, whether it's through free agency, through the trade market, or through the NFL draft. Of course, the draft is the later of those 3 things that really opens up. And I think Kenny Pickett, if they go into the draft without a quarterback, they're going to be aggressive trying to find one. Kenny Pickett's really elevated his draft stock throughout the season. And I think he's someone that can come into Washington and really elevate what this team can do, especially for a guy like Terry McLaurin. I think Pickett throwing the ball down the field a little bit more consistently than Tyler Heineke. He's an upgrade at that quarterback spot for sure, and the Washington football team badly needs an upgrade in that position. Pick 13, we got the Las Vegas Raiders here now. And with this pick, there's a few different ways that they could look. I think wide receiver is probably the lead option, though. And the guy that really jumps out to me is Jameson Williams. They're going to look for speed. I think Jameson Williams, when it comes to the NFL Draft Combine, is going to steal the show. He's got exemplary speed. He's phenomenal out in space. He's going to run away from defenders. He is Henry Ruggs without the off-the-field issues. Of course, the Raiders a few years back did take Henry Ruggs, and I think Jameson Williams is even a better route runner than Henry Ruggs was. When you look at what Jameson Williams can really be in the NFL, he's a blend of Devontae Smith, also a little bit of a blend of Henry Ruggs, does a lot really well. Alabama's becoming that school that produces all the top-end wide receivers. When you look at who around the league has been so dominant, a lot of them are Alabama wideouts. Jameson Williams just one of the latest examples of that here. Las Vegas grabs Jameson Williams, gets a downfield option for Derek Carr. They badly need some more speed out wide. They've been looking for that for years. Jameson Williams is going to bring that to Las Vegas. Pick 14, we got the Philadelphia Eagles here, Again, on the clock, pick 14, Ahmad Gardner was their selection, 10th overall. And at this point, they're going to look into the linebacker room. I know this is something they historically have not done. However, Nakobe Dean is sitting right here for them. Really good value pickup. They badly need to find a linebacker. I know that this is not what they normally do. They normally do not go cornerback linebacker in round 1. But when you have 3 first-round picks, you get to make some luxury picks. And when you look at your team and you realize that cornerback's not a strong suit, linebacker's not our strong spot, we need to find guys who can make those strong spots. And so far, Ahmad Gardner and Nakobe Dean are 2 players that I do really think elevate what this team can be for the future. Pick 15, we got the Denver Broncos here now on the clock. Of course, Teddy Bridgewater did go down with an injury, so I think their season might be up in the air at this point just based off the health of the quarterback. Drew Lock, clearly not the guy there in Denver at this point. I think that they could look at the quarterback position. However, I don't necessarily love what's out here at this point for them. And for that reason, I'm actually going to look at Charles Cross. They're going to go with the tackle. I think that they could use one just based off the injuries that they've sustained over the last calendar year. And Charles Cross comes in, could be an instant day 1 starter for them at that tackle spot at Mississippi State. Pretty good in pass protection. And I think for the Denver Broncos, they're going to be a team that explores the quarterback market through free agency or through a trade. Also at pick 16, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers here, and I think just like the Denver Broncos, with what's off the board already, they're going to really explore the quarterback market when it comes to free agency and trade destinations, because you're looking at a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who has already kind of hinted maybe Pittsburgh is the place for him. That would make a lot of sense to me if Aaron Rodgers came into Pittsburgh and became their franchise quarterback. They would win a ton with him. So for me and for the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's about trying to improve that offensive line for Aaron Rodgers, and there's not a better option here than Kenyon Green. He is extremely good on the offensive line. I mean, watching him, he's very impressive just because of his ability to help in blitz protection, especially with the mobility he provides at guard. He's able to engage in double team blocks. He's really good in that area, but he's also able, when dropping back, to help tackles off the edge. He has the athleticism to help seal an edge with a tackle, which is very important in pass protection to limit some of the top edges in the game. Kenyon Green going to be a really good pickup. The Steelers need more help along the offensive line, but I think Kenyon Green a good place to start. Probably day 2, come back, try and find a tackle, and you're looking a lot better for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pick 17, we got the Cleveland Browns here on the board. And this is one where you have to just look at what's on the board and not overthink the selection here. It's going to be Garrett Wilson. He is arguably wide receiver 1 in this year's class. He's been so good for the Ohio State Buckeyes, and I think he's really supplanted Chris Olave as the number 1 option there. Of course, Jackson Smith-Njigba has been really good for the Buckeyes as well, but he's only a sophomore. He's not in this year's draft class. Garrett Wilson is, however, and the Browns want to keep him in state, keep him in Ohio. He goes to Cleveland and instantly becomes the number 1 wide receiver there. Jarvis Landry, I know he's been really good, really productive throughout his NFL career, but I think Garrett Wilson just has another level to him that Jarvis Landry doesn't. Of course, Jarvis Landry hasn't been scoring a ton of touchdowns this year. I know Baker Mayfield's been a little shaky. He's been injured. You also had to deal with COVID there. If you're Cleveland, they've had a lot of things go wrong for them, and they're still a winning record currently as I record this video. Garrett Wilson, though, going to be an important upgrade for them at the wide receiver spot. Odell Beckham Jr. just quite frankly did not work out in Cleveland. There's nothing wrong to say that. I think both sides wanted it to work. It just never did. Garrett Wilson, however, he's going to come in and it's going to make a lot of money in Cleveland there because I think he's going to have a great productive NFL career, and the Browns get a really, really good wide receiver option, 17th overall. Pick 18, we've got the Baltimore Ravens here now on the clock, and they're a team with a few different options to look at here. There's one guy I really, really do like for them, though, and that is right here at that interior defensive line, Jordan Davis from Georgia. I think this is a phenomenal grab here. He does not play 3 downs very consistently. I was actually talking with my co-creator, Austin, about this off air, and Jordan Davis does not play 3 downs very consistently at all for the Georgia Bulldogs. However, Jordan Davis, what he does do is disrupt plays when he's in. When you're looking at the Baltimore Ravens, it's clear they are so strong across their interior defensive front and their defensive line that Jordan Davis is an upgrade for them, but he doesn't have to play all 3 downs. He can be a 2-down D lineman, come in, make a couple plays, get subbed out. They've got enough depth where they can afford him coming out of games early and makes them a really good landing spot for Jordan Davis, especially when you consider Calais Campbell's age. He's probably not going to be there super long. They need someone like Jordan Davis who can come in and be a game wrecker up the middle. Pick 19, we've got the New Orleans Saints here. Of course, had their shutout win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last night, 9-0. Not very often you see a score like that. And if you're the Saints here, there's a few different things you would want to look at. Quarterback, of course, is one of those areas that you would want to consider. However, with Sam Howell here, Desmond Ridder, Malik Willis, I'm not necessarily sure if I'm sold on that. So what I do want to do is come back here and actually look at the wide receiver position. And there are a few really, really good ones here. For me, the guy that jumps out is Treylon Burks, because with the idea that you're getting Michael Thomas back, someone who can work the middle of the field so well, you need to get someone who can work the outside as a big wide receiver, very athletic, can get him the ball in a few different ways. I think becomes the ultimate utility wide receiver here for the New Orleans Saints as the wide receiver 2. Treylon Burks, very good size at 6'3", really good athleticism. You can get him the ball behind the line of scrimmage. He's very comfortable making plays with it. He can also stretch the ball over the top, function in the red zone, and outside the numbers. And I think that's really where the key element is for Treylon Burks here, is they want someone who can work outside the numbers and be a real outside threat wide receiver so they can push the ball down the field a little bit more going into next season. Treylon Burks is going to be that guy for them. He's had a really, really good season there in the SEC, played really well against Alabama earlier this year, who's now the number 1 team in the nation, according to college football playoff rankings. Treylon Burks, he's been productive. He's played through injury. He's made it work. He's a really, really good pickup here for the New Orleans Saints, 19th overall. They go from having basically 0 number 1 wide receiver options to having basically 2 going into next season. Pick 20, we got the Buffalo Bills here, a team that has just been devastated at the cornerback position when you consider Tre'Davious White's ACL injury. You also look at what they had on their roster, just didn't have a ton actually at that cornerback spot. So that is where I do want to look here. And a good one's fallen to them. Kaiir Elam usually goes a little bit higher in our mock drafts. I have him falling to 20 this time. I do think there is some concerns with his actual production and productivity at that cornerback spot. But the upside is there. And Sean McDermott's shown time and time again, they're willing to take guys who are upside players. He did it with Tremaine Edmonds, did it with Ed Oliver, he did it with Tre'Davious White, and all 3 of those guys have worked out phenomenally. I think Kaiir Elam, another example of that. You're going to bring him in. He's outside cornerback ready. You play him early. He's got good speed, good athleticism. You put him at the outside cornerback spot, and you get Tre'Davious White hopefully healthy pretty soon, going into next season at some point pretty early on, I'm hoping for them. And then you have a really, really good 1-2 punch at that cornerback spot Both of the guys you can use to try and match up with Tyreek Hill, who the Bills are probably looking at still as the team to beat in the AFC with the Kansas City Chiefs. They need to find ways to beat them. Kyer Elam helps them in that regard. 21, we got the Philadelphia Eagles here again. Remember, pick 10, they went with Ahmad Gardner. Pick 14, they went with Nakobe Dean. And here at 21, the Eagles, there's a few different ways they could go. We could look at all defense here for them and try and find a little bit more help, or we could go along the offensive line. Offensive tackles thinned out a little bit, though. Let's look at the interior offensive line. Again, has thinned out a little bit. So I don't necessarily know if I see them going along the offensive line. Tight end, they're set. Wide receiver could be an interesting route for them. I would like to see them grab another wide receiver, but they do have a pick in round 2 that they could use for that as well if they wanted to find a wide receiver. For me here, I think they're going to go with an edge, actually, because I think that that's really what their goal is. They've got some guys expiring, Derek Barnett, for example, and they need to find someone who could really, really help them. And I think for me, the guy is going to be DeMarvin Leal here. I know he's a little bit more of an interior defensive lineman, but that's what the Eagles like to look for. They like to look for guys who can really impact the run game first and then get involved in the pass game. DeMarvin Leal is going to do that out of Texas A&M. He's versatile, can play him at interior defensive line, but you can also play him at edge. I know Fletcher Cox is going to be a big part of what the Eagles are looking to do into next season as well. You have a really, really good start there along that defensive line. You just need to add a little bit more raw talent, raw athleticism, physicality. DeMarvin Leal brings that for you if you are Philadelphia. Pick 22, we got the Miami Dolphins here now on the clock. Last year, of course, they grabbed Jalen Phillips out of the University of Miami. Really good pickup for them. And we know how strong their cornerback room as well is there in Miami. You got Xavier Howard. You've got also a few other nice pieces in there. Noah Igbenogany, for example. I really liked him when they drafted him. The Miami Dolphins have done a good job building up this team. And when you look at their team, wide receiver position is thinning out a little bit just based on the idea that Will Fuller is only there on a 1-year contract. Devontae Parker, I'm not sure what his long-term future is with the Miami Dolphins either. So I think wide receiver could make some sense here for the Dolphins. I also think that they badly need to look along the offensive line, though. And I think that they actually go ahead and pull the trigger on a guy like Trevor Penning from Northern Iowa. UNI product, can be a really, really solid tackle for you. Probably want to play him at right tackle to protect the blind side of Tua Tagovailoa, who has really drastically improved his play as they've been winning games here as of late. The Dolphins have really saved their season. And of course, now here too, they get Trevor Penning, someone who I think can be a starting tackle in the NFL. Pick 23, we got the Los Angeles Chargers here. And usually we're looking at the wide receiver position for the Chargers. I like what's out here for the wide receiver position for the Los Angeles Chargers. There's a few really good options for this team. I could see them really try and pull the trigger on something like that, especially if they're nervous that they're going to lose Mike Williams. Of course, by the draft, we will actually know if they do lose Mike Williams or not. However, David Ojabo sitting here. He's such a productive speed rusher for Michigan. He's been the counterpart to Aiden Hutchinson, who we had go second overall in this mock draft. David Ojabo, a really, really great pickup if you are Los Angeles, because you see someone who can come off the edge. He's a right end rusher, which is perfect because you have Joey Bosa, who plays a lot of left end. And it's clear this year, the Chargers need a little bit more edge help. They need a little bit more pass rush presence, and I think David Ojabo provides that here. They would love to get Jordan Davis if he was on the board from Georgia. They need a little bit more help in the interior defensive line as well against the run game. But David Ojabo is going to help them a lot coming off the edge with speed. He's going to pressure the quarterback a lot, and he's going to make a lot of really, really good plays. I think this is a home run pick for the Los Angeles Chargers. Pick 24, we've got the Detroit Lions here again, of course. Went with Aiden Hutchinson second overall. We just talked about that. And now 24th overall here. The Lions are going to be looking a little bit more on defense. Linebacker position has thinned out a little bit, though. So they're going to actually be looking at that safety spot where there's some really good options here yet on the board. And for me, it's going to be Jaquan Brisker out of Penn State. They want to get better defensively. There's no denying that Dan Campbell's team wants more talent on the defensive side of the football, and they're getting it here. Jaquan Brisker, really, really good player for Penn State, and also Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan. They get two Big Ten players, and I think both of them really, really good, productive players in the NFL early into their careers. Aiden Hutchinson, Jaquan Brisker instantly make this Detroit Lions defense a lot better. Pick 25, we got the Cincinnati Bengals here now, and they're going to be looking for a little bit more help along the offensive line, clearly in round one. However, with what's on the board here, there isn't a ton available to them that I think really makes a ton of sense here, other than Nicholas Pettit-Freer, who I think is the instant pick for them considering he's on the board, they need a long-term tackle to replace Riley Reif this offseason. Nicholas Pettiford is someone who I think can grow into a phenomenal pass-blocking offensive lineman in the NFL. I know he got manhandled by Aiden Hutchinson, but he's the second overall pick in the draft for a reason. Nicholas Pettiford is a good tackle. He's not going to have as tough of a performance like he did against Aiden Hutchinson again in his career. I would just be shocked if he does. For me, he's a first-round player near the back end, especially when you consider how pass-heavy today's NFL is. He becomes an instant pick for me because of how good he generally is in that area. Pick 26, we got the Tennessee Titans here now. And it's been clear over the last few weeks of the season, moment that A.J. Brown went out, this team just does not have enough help at wide receiver. They need another wideout in the fold here. If you're the Tennessee Titans, they are definitely missing Corey Davis this year. I know they brought in Julio Jones. However, there's been some flaws with that. He's older. He's on a big contract. I don't necessarily know if I can count on him week in, week out going into the future. For me, it's going to be Chris Olave, who I think is the perfect complement to A.J. Brown and Julio Jones, because Olave can really work the middle of the field and down the field. He's really good on seam routes. He's going to be able to take the top off the defense. A.J. Brown's so good after the catch and working the underneath to intermediate routes that those two guys are very, very good long-term options together. Olave, you're going to see a lot of play action there if you're Tennessee, especially when Derrick Henry's back healthy. And Chris Olave becomes the beneficiary of that. You're going to have the team sink in for the run game, and Chris Olave is going to take the top off of it. Ryan Tannehill is going to have to play a little bit better to deliver that ball there to Chris Olave. However, they have him on that big contract. They're going to have him around, and I think Chris Olave is a really, really good pickup for this Tennessee Titans football team. Pick 27, we got the Arizona Cardinals here. Of course, it sputtered a little bit as of late, lost to the Detroit Lions this past week, but they are going to take Trent McDuffie here because they need a little bit more cornerback help. I think that's really the one that makes the most sense, and McDuffie's been extremely productive this year in college football, playing for Washington. Does not give up a ton of catches, and when he does not give up a lot of yards. He's very, very sound in his technique and a really, really consistent cornerback, which I think is of the utmost importance there. If you're Arizona, when you look at the teams you have to match up with in your own division even, you have to have an answer for Deebo Samuel. You have to have an answer for Cooper Kupp. You have to have an answer for Robert Woods. You have to have an answer now for Odell Beckham Jr. They need more cornerbacks. Trent McDuffie, he's going to be a good pickup for them out of Washington. I like what he can be, and that's a good grab. Been so productive. If he was a little bit bigger, he'd be a top 20 pick. I feel like I say that every single video. Trent McDuffie, a good grab here. 28, we got the Buccaneers, who did not score any points against the New Orleans Saints this past time out. However, I think the Buccaneers could still be considered one of the favorites in the NFL to win the actual Super Bowl. They're so good, so stout. They've got a lot of talent on this team. And for me, I think the position that they have to consider now is wide receiver, because I think it's kind of a foregone conclusion at this point that you are going to lose Chris Godwin or Donovan Smith. You have to make your choice on which one you're going to keep there. And just based off of what's gone off the board at tackle, Donovan Smith becomes the harder guy to replace, because there's not a really great tackle here available now at this point that I think could be a day one starter for you. But at wide receiver, I think there is a guy here, John Mechie from Alabama. I think stylistically, he makes the most sense for Tampa Bay if you're looking to replace Chris Godwin. I think Drake London's a better wide receiver. However, they don't need an outside guy who can go over the top like that. What they need is someone who can function across the middle of the field. That's what John Mechie does. He's going to work extremely well with Tom Brady. John Mechie has over 1,000 yards this year for Alabama, so he's been productive. He just doesn't get as much of the love as these top guys do, arguably because of some of his traits, but I think he's still a good pickup for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I think Chris Godwin probably moves on for a big payday with another organization. Pick 29, we got the New England Patriots here now, and I think they're a team that's going to look at that edge position, specifically at Drake Jackson. He's too fast, too athletic, and too good off the edge for the Patriots to not pick him up. I know Matthew Judon's had a great year this year, but I think the Patriots are looking for a little bit more edge help, someone who can be really, really productive for them and help in the run game as well. Drake Jackson is going to be requisite in the run game, but I think his real benefit comes as a pass rusher. He's going to get after the quarterback, bring a lot of pressure, and that's what the Patriots need to bolster this defense a little bit more yet. Pick 30, we got the Dallas Cowboys here, and they're extremely sad to see Drake Jackson go off the board because they would have loved to pick him up. But they're going to look at that edge position a little bit themselves here, and they're going to see some guys out here that they like, starting with Jermaine Johnson. He is for sure a first-round player in my estimation. Another guy who's got a good blend of production and physicality, athleticism, and upside. I think that the Dallas Cowboys here get a really good player in Jermaine Johnson II. They need more pass rush help. They need another edge. And it's very, very beneficial getting an edge with a fifth-year contract at the 30th pick. That's rare to get a player of Jermaine Johnson's caliber here at this spot. I think it's a really good pickup for Dallas and something that they definitely need to rush to the table or to the podium and make this selection when it's there for them. Pick 31, we've got the Kansas City Chiefs here, and they're going to be looking for a wide receiver. I know Roger McCreary could make some sense. I know a lot of people think, oh, we got to look cornerback. We got to look defense here for Kansas City. They've kind of found their stride. Steve Spagnuolo has done a great job with it. And I think the thing that makes the Chiefs so difficult to beat is just how good their offense is. There's so much pressure on other teams' offenses to even keep up. So if you go out and take a guy like Drake London, who I think is a phenomenal pickup here, arguably had he stayed healthy would have been a top 15 pick in this year's class. It's terrifying for NFL defenses. You get a huge wide receiver at 6'5". You can play him on the outside. Tyreek Hill, we know what he is as a blur on the inside. It's insane what this team could be offensively with the selection of Drake London. The upside is here. The long-term future at that wide receiver spot there, you get a guy who's young, fast, big, athletic, with a fifth-year option. I mean, it's a no-brainer here. If you're Drake London, I love this a lot for the Kansas City Chiefs, and they roll in this one. Pick 32, the Green Bay Packers, the final pick here of the first round. And they're sad to see Drake London go off the board. They would have loved to look for a wide receiver. Jahan Dotson, to me, I just don't think that they would pull the trigger here at this point on him. But there is a few other good options out here. Andrew Booth Jr. is worth highlighting here. I think there's also some other good selection players that could make some sense for this team. However, for me, I am going to actually stick with Roger McCreary here. I think they're going to go with an outside cornerback out of Auburn. He makes some sense to me. We're going to check out our grades here. Of course, the grades are always questionable because PFF just has positional bias toward quarterbacks and cornerbacks most of the time. But here you see kind of what they're grading a lot of things. Garrett Wilson, they think that's an A. Kyer Elam, A+. DeMarvin Leal, A+. The thing is, too, about this, not every team's going to get an A+ pick. Evan Neal, maybe a few spots high at the tackle spot, but if Houston really feels like they need a tackle, Evan Neal's the guy they're going to go with. Tyler Linderbaum, of course, PFF hates centers. Tyler Linderbaum's a phenomenal player, so I wouldn't read too much into this draft grade. Like I said, they're going to give the positional value to quarterback here 10 out of 10 times. Matt Corral, A+ pick, they say, for the Carolina Panthers. I mean, there's issues with the way PFF does things. Hopefully you guys did enjoy today's video, though. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.